Hello, Mr. Koble back here at it again. Today we're going to do a little read aloud for our eighth graders. It is read aloud of the DBQ. How does the Constitution guard against tyranny? It is currently about 5 days before the 2020 election. So this is very good timing on the different checks and balances and the different roles that government has. So without further ado, we'll get started. All right, so the first part, your teachers might, some years I might have you do the full thing. Some years I might only have you do a little bit. I think I'm going to read the full thing because I think this is very important that you guys know. So we're just going to get started. The background essay. So how did the Constitution guard against tyranny? Before we start, we want to make sure that we have a little recap of where we started in terms of this context. So the Revolutionary War was fought because they thought King George was a tyrant who was not giving them a democracy, who was not giving them any right to vote, who was not giving them any say. So that is the first one, is how do we guard against people becoming tyrants and taking too much power away from the people? That is the first thing that comes in mind. After the Revolutionary War, we had the Articles of Confederation. Articles of Confederation were a hot mess because they did not give the federal government enough power to actually enforce rules and enforce laws. So the second question is, how big and how strong do we want our federal government to be as opposed to our state government? Now, federal government, as a reminder, so I'm going to do it black. Federal, okay, never mind. Federal is the whole country. So it is the people in charge of all 50 states and the nation's response. So the whole country is federalism. And you can't see this on the board, can you? I'll get it closer. The whole country. So federal is the whole country. And state, I'll do it in green because it's the opposite. State just governs what goes on inside that state. So the federal capital of the United States is Washington, D.C., because they make decisions there that affect the whole country. The state government in California takes place in Sacramento. And in Sacramento, they make decisions that affect only the state of California. And if you want to add one more layer in here, because you're fancy like me and you like politics, municipal is the next one, which is just the city. So if you want to talk about municipal laws, you are talking about laws that only affect the city. So that would be like the city of San Diego. It would be a municipal law that only affects San Diego and nowhere else. So kind of some differences. I think when we had Officer Guardado on our Zoom to talk about being a cop, he talked about municipal laws and why in some cities it's like illegal to drive barefoot and why others it is. That would be an example of a municipal law. But anyway, yada, yada, yada. All right, let's get reading. So we have protecting from tyranny. We have being like how strong do we want our federal government to be? We have how strong do we want our state government to be? And we'll probably come across one more. Oh, and how are we going to stop parts of government from becoming too powerful? That's another idea we're going to get into later. All right, so here we go. In May of 1787, they began to drift into Philadelphia. 55 individuals, all responding to the call for a constitutional convention. Most were wealthy, all were white, all were male. They came from 11 of the rather disunited states stretched across along the eastern seaboard. New Hampshire delegates would not show up until July. Rhode Island would not show up at all. Classic Rhode Island, am I right? All right. If anyone from Rhode Island's watching this, I'm not sorry. The problem facing this remarkable group of men was that the existing Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, just wasn't working. Under the Articles, there was no chief executive. So executive has a tie, so like the president. There was no court system, and there was not even a way for the central government to force a state to pay taxes. A new constitution creating a stronger central government was necessary if the new nation was to hold together. The decision to go forward with a new constitution presented a special challenge. Was it possible to frame a government that was strong enough to serve the needs of the new nation and yet which did not create any kind of tyranny? Just 4 years earlier, the 13 states had concluded a long revolutionary war to rid themselves of control by a king. Could they create a government that was tyranny-free? Tyranny is most often described as harsh, absolute power in the hands of one individual, like a king or a dictator. Thus, the colonists called King George III a tyrant. However, in this mini-Q, we will use a broader definition of tyranny, one provided by James Madison. In his support of the Constitution, Madison wrote as follows, quote, the accumulation of all powers in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, is the very definition of tyranny in the Federalist Paper. So basically he's saying that the accumulation of every single power in one group's hands is also tyranny. So you have to split up that power. Okay. Anyway, what Madison was saying is that there are many kinds of tyranny. You can have a tyranny of one supreme ruler who takes all power for himself or herself. You can also have a tyranny of a few, where several generals or religious leaders seize control. You can even have tyranny by the many, whereas when the majority denies rights to a minority. For Madison and his fellow delegate, it's funny that they talk about slavery, that they just completely dismiss slavery when they're talking about tyranny. Okay, anyway. For Madison and his fellow delegates, the challenge was to write a constitution that was strong enough to hold the states and the people together without letting any one person or group or branch or level of government gain too much control. Examine the 4 documents that follow and answer the question, how did the Constitution guard against tyranny? Okay. So that's kind of the idea. How are we going to split up power? So here are our background essay questions. I do want you guys to do this because it'll help you kind of visualize this stuff a lot. Class is in 20 minutes. So I probably don't have this like written out for you, but on the Google Doc, go ahead and take care of that. That would be great. Very good recap, actually. So please do all these questions. Friendly definitions for these. If you give me a copy-pasted definition for these, I'm going to mentally punch you in the face. So do not just copy and paste something down. I hate that. There is no learning involved in copy pasting. Make friendly definitions, 10 words or less. Okay. All right. So pre-bucketing. So when we are looking at this, we need to think, because I know we did this to 7th graders, we need to think, all right, let's start to think about what different areas our arguments are going to land in. I don't have a black marker, which is very unfortunate because that shows up the best. I have to steal one from the office. I should have done that before this. All right, I'll use blue. Blue's going to show up the best. Okay, so when you're thinking about buckets, we need to think about what 4 reasons what 4 different problems are they going to have to solve. So we know that based on the Articles of Confederation, we have size. By size, I mean strength. Oh, this needs to be bigger. We know that we have 1. There we go. That's my bucket. We have strength of feds. How strong should the federal government be? And why is maybe it better to not have it as strong? Another bucket might be, this is where I really wish I had a DocuCam. If one of you want to buy me one, that'd be great. Or start like a GoFundMe or something. Anyway, another bucket might be splitting government power. So how are we going to split the power of the government and everything it can do to people? How are we going to split that up so one group cannot become tyrants? That's another huge question. Other questions we run into as we go through this might be, state power. So what powers are the states, oh, I can't say it. What powers are the states going to have? I really hope that shows the video and I put this on as a YouTube clip. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like an idiot. So these are the three buckets we're going to go with now. State power, strength of the feds, and splitting government power. Those are the three things we're kind of going to think about as we go through these sources. And if we need to add another bucket, we will. All right, let's keep going. Document A. So whenever we are looking at things, the sources, the first thing we need to see is the author, the title, and the year. So this one's written by James Madison. We know that James Madison is a huge advocate for the Constitution. It is written in a Federalist paper. We know from Hamilton that the Federalist Papers are a series of essays that are convincing people to vote for the Constitution. And it's written in 1788. So the Constitution has not been adopted yet. Here we go. In the compound Republic of America. So first, let's just ignore what compound republic means. I mean, if you don't know it, just skip it. There's gonna be a lot of these technical words. Just skip over them. Get to the point. So in America, the power surrendered by the people is first divided between two distinct governments, state and federal. So state and federal. Now let's stop right there. So power given away by the people is split into two different groups, state and federal. So we allow California to have power over us and Washington, D.C. to have power over us. Okay. And the portion allotted to each subdivided among distinct and separate departments. Okay. Portion allotted to each subdivided among distinct and separate departments. So what this is saying is that each group, state and federal that we give power to, that power is spread out as well among different groups. So hence a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. So what he's saying is, and this is tough. This is the toughest unit you're going to have all year. Is that the powers given to state and federal government are going to overlap a bit. And the reason that they do this is because when they overlap, then you're going to have people competing to serve the people. You're going to have leaders and governors competing to serve the people. So you can see the idea. So this idea of splitting power between central and state government, between federal and state government, is known as federalism. So the split up of power in the Constitution is below. So you can see that some powers are exclusive to the states. Only the states can set up a local government. Only the states can establish schools. The states decide how elections are going to run. The states decide marriage and businesses and stuff. Now, the federal government, on the other side, are the only ones that can do things like regulate trade, make treaties with other countries, do army stuff, declare war, print money, and immigration. Whole country decisions that affect the entire country are federal decisions. Now, they also have shared powers. So both the feds and the state can tax. So whenever you get taxes, you get double dipped from both. Both can borrow money. So I know California borrows a bunch of money to fight fires and stuff. Both can set up court systems. So if you're tried in a federal court for a federal crime, that means that maybe you've committed crimes in 3 different states and ran from one to the other. So it affects the whole country. Maybe, or maybe you just committed a crime in one state. So there's lots of shared powers. So you have shared powers, state powers, and federal powers. Okay. So go ahead and answer these questions. And then let's think about, when you're done, think about this last one. How does federalism guard against tyranny? So how does this stop one group from getting too much power? That's the thing we have to think about. Let's go back to our buckets and think, and my lights just went out. I hate everything. How does this fit with state powers and the strength of the feds? This actually might be better. We'll see. Maybe not, probably not. I hate the way my skin looks. All right, I'm gonna keep going. So pause, do that if you need to. Then come back to this video in a second. Enter my room a little bit. All right. Next, we have another Federalist paper from James Madison. Cool. So he says the accumulation of powers, all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, whether, okay, yada, 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 yada. Liberty requires that so when they go on huge tirades like this, just skip it. You know, just get to the point. So the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary. So that is your Congress, your executive, and your Supreme Court, requires that the three great departments of power should be separate and distinct. So we need to separate the powers. So Article 1, all legislative powers, legislate means write laws, herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate, and a House of Representatives. So all of you right now, I hope on your screen, you're going to say a few things with me. You're going to say Congress. So Congress writes laws. So all of you go, Congress writes laws, because they're the legislator. What does legislative people do? Legislative people write laws. Who's the legislative body in the United States? Congress. Congress writes laws. And Congress is split up into two different branches. You have the Senate, and you all are going to do 2 when you do Senate, because every state gets 2 votes. So you have the House writes laws. Congress writes laws, and Congress is split up into the Senate and the House of Representatives. So in the House of Representatives, your state gets votes based on all of the people living in that state. Okay, so that's the first part. Article 2, the executive power, so power to actually do stuff, shall be vested in a president of the United States that shall hold his office during the term of 4 years and serve with the vice president. So president, I do a little tie. So you make a little tie for yourself, and that's your code for president. Okay. Article 3, the judicial power, that's the courts, shall be invested in one Supreme Court. In such inferior courts, so lower courts, as the Congress may from time to time, yada, 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 the judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their office during good behavior. So basically, judges don't have a term limit. They get to be judged as long as they want and as long as they don't do anything bad. So I say Supreme Court, because you know that big hammer, the gavel that they use, where they go, huzzah, court's in session, Supreme Court. So you have Congress that writes laws, and Congress is split up into the Senate and the House, and then you have so that's one branch. The next branch is the executive branch, and they execute laws. This is your president, your vice president, your cabinet. I did that for cabinet. Your FBI, your CIA, your police department, your Department of Justice, that kind of stuff. All those alphabet soups for those older kids that are in AP Gov. And then the judicial power is the Supreme Court. Supreme Court judges and interprets laws and sees if they're constitutional or not. Okay, go ahead and answer these questions and move on to the next one. I'm going to try to speed up. Okay, another Federalist paper. Look at that. Same guy, James Madison. So the constant aim is to divide and arrange the several offices in such a manner as that they may be a check on the other. The 3 branches should not be so far separated as to have no constitutional control over each other. So the goal of this government is to divide power into 3 branches and have all 3 branches be able to check the other ones so that they don't accumulate too much power. You do not want one branch to have way more power than all of the others. So when they're making this, they want all three branches to have power over each other. So none of them can get too powerful. So you can see a list of checks and balances. So balancing power between the different branches. So you can see that Congress can do things to the president. Congress has to approve their nominations for judge, for Supreme Court, for judge, for Supreme Court, for the cabinet, everything. We'll get to vetoes in a second. Congress can impeach the president and remove them. We saw this with Trump, where he was impeached, but he wasn't removed. But if they decided that what Trump did was bad enough to warrant being removed from office, then they would remove him, and that would be a check on presidential power. This would have happened to Nixon. In response, the president has a check on Congress. So the president can veto congressional legislation. So Congress passes the law, the president doesn't like the law, the president can say, nope, not gonna happen, talk to my hand, veto, get out of my face, bye Felicia, and sends it back to Congress. If the laws are really popular, Congress can actually override the veto, but it doesn't happen that often. Okay, so what can the president do to the Supreme Court now? The president can nominate judges. We just saw this with Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who was nominated by the president for the Supreme Court, despite the election literally going on right now, but that's for another day. Literally not gonna talk about that. In response, the court can declare presidential acts unconstitutional. We saw this about 3 years ago when Trump did the Muslim ban, and the Supreme Court said, no, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. You have to change it. They made some changes and they went back to it. But anyway, that is an example of checks and balances. In response, the courts on Congress can do the same thing. They can declare laws that Congress passes, because Congress writes laws. The Supreme Court can declare those unconstitutional, and they are disbanded. In response, the Senate, in the Congress, the Senate is responsible for confirming the president's nominations to the Supreme Court. So recently, President Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett, and the Senate, led by Republicans, confirmed that nomination to the Supreme Court. So she is now on the Supreme Court for life, and she's like 40. Once again, despite an election literally going on right now, and she is the only Supreme Court justice who has not received a single vote from the opposition party in U.S. history. But anyway, 2020. Okay, please do these questions. All right, last one, document D. You have the House of Representatives. So this is the actual Constitution of the United States. This is not a person. This is literally what's in the document. I'm going to move kind of fast. So Article 1, Section 2, here's the clause. Representatives. So this is talking about the House of Representatives that has all the people. Representatives shall be apportioned, so number, so the amount given, according to population. So House of Representatives based on amount of people. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000, but every state needs to have 1. So for every 30,000 people, you have 1 representative. I think that's gone up in the last few years. The state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to 3, Massachusetts 8. So it goes on and like divvies up the first like amounts, but it increases over time. So House of Representatives based on all of the people that live in the state. Now the Senate. So the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislatures, therefore of 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. So senators, there's 2 from each state, and that's it. Every state gets the same amount of senators, despite how big or small they are. And they serve for 6 years. Answer the questions. All right, now let's think about our buckets. I know there's 4 here. You guys are gonna do 2. So you're gonna have a 4-paragraph essay. No, okay, let me rephrase that. Some years I'm going to give you a 4-paragraph essay. Right now it's 2020, the election's in 5 days. I want to move fast. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. That'll be off the fly of the cuff. but some, these directions might be different depending on the year. But for this year, 2020, I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But anyway, fill out your buckets, as many big reasons that you can. So we have power of the feds, state government, splitting government power, and maybe you can have small states versus big states might be another one. All right, and then you start your outline. That's it for this. Have a good time. Good luck. Let me know if you need help. Go Padres.